The president can fire all his ministers. So he can fire us, and there are many people in the ANC who want him to fire us. But the fact is that I think the president knows, and many of his ministers know, what the consequences will be. The rand will crash. We'll be lucky if it's 25 rand to the dollar. The economy will go into a tailspin. Investors will withdraw. Unemployment will increase. We'll probably be pushed out of AGOA. Tariffs will go up. The unemployment in the agricultural sector will soar. And South Africa will have one of those huge jolts of history that take us another level down, a big level down. And I think the more sensible people in the ANC know that. And that's why they've been very careful not to kick us out. They want us to leave. They want to do what is called a constructive dismissal on us, which is why they are doing this again and again. But no one knows more than we do what the consequences are of us leaving, for jobs, for the economy, for growth, for the future of the country. We also know that Paul Mashatile would then now come in, and he's very closely involved in the lotto tender and a whole range of other things. We'd have corruption on steroids, and we'd have EFF and MK possibly in government. And after Donald Trump showed that kill the Boer chant, sung very gustily by Julius Malema to the whole world, you can imagine the reverberations of that. We're certainly not going to make it easy. They'd love it if we walked and then took the blame for everything that will follow. We're not going to do that, and they know that we're not going to walk out, but we're not going to be treated like a doormat either. And there are lots of steps between being treated like a doormat and walking out. The penultimate step to walking out is to do a motion of no confidence in the president. Now we've done the sums, we've done all the adding up, and we think we can get to 196 or 197 votes to outvote the president. And that would probably succeed, because I've never seen the ANC bring all its parliamentarians into the House ever, not even when there's a 3-line whip. There's always someone doing something else, shopping or in a hotel room with someone or overseas or somewhere. And so it would be very, very close if we got 197 votes, absolutely. And Ramaphosa would know that his life was on a string. And if we're not there, it's very likely that the ANC will internally recall Ramaphosa, as they've done to all of the other presidents, except Nelson Mandela. So he knows what's at stake. And they all know what's at stake. And we are going to take intermediate steps from doing nothing is not an option. We're going to take intermediate steps until such time as we have to take the big one, which is a motion of no confidence. If the president wants to throw us out in the meantime,
Please specify what you mean.
that's up to him. I've got a new phone that talks to me all the time. I'm sorry about that. But if Ramaphosa becomes indistinguishable from the corrupt RET faction, then we've got no other card to play. If he carries on doing what he's doing, which is simply ignore the statement of intent, treat us as if we are adjuncts that really don't matter, behave as if the ANC got an overall majority, then we're going to have to show him it didn't. Well, most certainly MK would be first on the wagon if there was a motion of no confidence in the president. They would definitely. And even if MK didn't go into government, you would have a minority coalition. And that would be very interesting to look at. Because then the DA would have the balance of power on every single issue. Well, we have more power in our portfolios, obviously. So the ANC has got the Bella Act, but we've got the Minister of Basic Education. The ANC can do a whole range of things in agriculture, but we've got the minister. And that is probably the only reason why we're not getting slapped with 30% tariffs on our agricultural exports, because the DA has the ministry, and we've got a lot of respect in Washington. And so I can go on. The Expropriation Act, we're going to defeat in court. But the act is there, but we've got the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. So, it helps to have those people in those key positions, those crucial positions. And We will make as much as we can out of them. We know very well that Minister Schreiber is making progress in leaps and bounds in Home Affairs. So we've got a lot of power, and we do a lot of things, and we do a lot of things well, and we're producing really good outcomes. So all of that is going well. But we're not going to be treated like a doormat. And we're going to make sure that our response is commensurate to what has gone wrong. Now, what went wrong this time is that the president fired our deputy minister, Andrew Whitfield, who did nothing wrong whatsoever. The handbook that governs overseas travel says that if a member of the cabinet or a deputy minister wishes to travel abroad on government business, they should apply to the president for leave of absence. Now, firstly, Whitfield was not going on official business. He was going with the DA delegation because in the crisis at the time, the whole team in Washington wanted to know what was going on and what was the appropriate response. And we were going to Washington and say, listen, don't kick us out of AGOA. Don't slap a 30% import tariff on our goods. Don't punish us in that way because you're not punishing the ANC. They're fine. They're the looting elite. You're punishing the poor and the unemployed of South Africa, and don't do it. And that was what we were going to ask at that stage. And they were very interested to hear our views. So Emma Louise Powell, who is our international relations spokesperson, was going to go on her own. And then John said, because of the issues that are being discussed, he thought that Andrew Whitfield should go too. But it was a private DA trip. The minute John asked Andrew Whitfield to go, although he didn't have to because it wasn't an official visit, and although even if it were an official visit, the handbook only says they should apply to the president. But nevertheless, he did on the 22nd, on the 12th of February. That was the date he applied, on the 12th of February. He was leaving on the 22nd of February. He applied on the 12th. And he asked the president to go. He says, it's a DA trip. It's not an official visit. I won't purport to represent South Africa there, but I would like to go. If the president had replied and said, no, you can't, even though he didn't have to get permission, I can understand why. The president would have been very cross and would have fired him. But the president did not say no. In fact, he did not answer, even though Whitfield's office phoned his office every single day for an answer. It wasn't as if he just sent one letter and forgot about it. He asked every day. And in the end, when the time ran out, Whitfield got on the plane and left, knowing that there was nothing incumbent on him to have asked for permission in the first place. Now, if it had been about the trip overseas, why does the president wait till the end of June to fire him? No, for us, it's not about positions and status and stuff. It really isn't. And it's rough for Andrew, but he's been the first person who said, this is not about me and it's not about a position. It's about a principle. We're being sidelined here because we're asking too many difficult questions. And the smokescreen that is being used is nothing more than a smokescreen. They had to dig around and find a reason. They found a non-reason because the president was at fault if he thought that I needed to have permission. Why didn't he reply? And that is, of course, true. If one of your colleagues, and if you're a manager, and your colleague writes to you and says, please, may I know, I have to do this. There's an urgent issue that I have to deal with. It's in 10 days' time. May I please take leave? And you don't reply, even though your office has been nudged and nudged and nudged, and you know the request is there. You couldn't fire that person for going because you didn't read the correspondence or reply to it. It doesn't make sense, not even for a president. We believe in redress. We don't believe in ANC corruption under the smokescreen of redress. The NHI has got nothing to do with redress. The NHI is about bankrupting this country and creating a massive looting pot for the ANC. It's going to make healthcare much worse, and there are many ways to make healthcare much better for all, and including getting it up to private sector standards on the strategy that the DA has. We're totally in favor of redressing the imbalances of the past, and we've got the policies to do it. But NHI is unaffordable to the country. It will bankrupt the country. It will destroy what is left of good healthcare. And that's got nothing to do with transformation as far as we are concerned. There is ANC type transformation, which is destroy anything that works. That is the ANC's definition of transformation. Then we go on to the Expropriation Act. The Expropriation Act has nothing to do with transformation. There are 3 other laws that have something to do with land redistribution and restitution. There are 3 other laws. The ANC was very sneakily trying to bring in expropriation without compensation into a law that was not meant for the purposes of redress. It's meant for what they call eminent domain. That's what they call it in the United States, where, for example, if we urgently need to put in an electricity pylon, or if we need to move something and use somebody's land for a dam that is urgently needed. It's for infrastructure. It is not for restitution. The other acts that are for restitution say, within these deadlines, people must put in these claims to do this kind of thing. The window has been opened twice again, now it is closed. However, what the ANC is trying to do in the Expropriation Act is open that window in perpetuity so that there's never a deadline for anything. And a government official can recommend land for expropriation without compensation and without adequate reasons. So it is completely untrue that that is a transformation mechanism. It is a mechanism for the ANC to continue land grabbing as long as they like. So we are absolutely determined that that's got nothing to do with restitution and land reform. We thoroughly supported the land reform and the land restitution. We're taking it dead seriously. We've abided by it every step of the way. The reason why we took the national dialogue seriously is because it's in the statement of intent. But the way the statement of intent is supposed to be, well, it applies to decisions that are taken and initiatives that are taken, is that it has to be by consensus. And the DA wasn't consulted. This was another unilateral move by the ANC with the absurd price tag of 740 million rand. The absurd price tag of that. And we know exactly what that is, Bronwyn. That is the way of looting the state for the ANC's 2026 election campaign. That's what it is. First of all, they ignored the proportionality clause. They said they were going to have 27 cabinet ministers. We should have had 9 out of those 27. We settled for 6 because the ANC refused to give us any more, and we didn't want to pull the plug out of the boat on 3 more, so we left it there. Then they inflated it to way over 30, completely violating the proportionality clause. They violated every single clause so far, and the one that they absolutely ignore is the clause that says, number 18 says, all decisions are taken by consensus. Clause 19 explains what consensus is, and if we can't reach consensus, what sufficient consensus is. We've been asking since the beginning for an institutional mechanism to land that clause of how we work on sufficient consensus and what happens if we can't reach it. They have tried to step around that with the clearinghouse mechanism. We said we'd give it a try. It was a complete farce. It was a ruse to try and get us into something that was designed to circumvent the sufficient consensus clause in the most cynical and dishonest way. We give everything a chance until the ANC once again proves how dishonest, how cynical, how manipulative they are, and how they still have not even begun to grasp that they don't govern this country alone. Well, they must come back with what they come back with, and we then make a judgment. We've got a very sensible federal executive. The federal executive all get together. We sit and we discuss what the options are. We look at the consequences. We try to determine what the unintended consequences are going to be. We map it all out. We game it all out. And then we have a rational discussion around the link between the transgression and the response. We do all of these things very carefully, and then we decide on the response. We're ratcheting it up slowly, step by step, and we come very close to the numbers for a no-confidence motion, which we are not scared to play. But you do that for the real Hiroshima, because that is the nuclear option.